Hi, in this video I'm going to be telling you my top 10 books of 2023. So let's just get right into it. In 2023 I managed to read 20 books, and so I've narrowed it down to my top 10. I actually found this quite hard because I find I read a lot of books and I like a lot of books, but I just like them. It takes a lot for a book to go a bit further, so making this list was a bit difficult because I find it really hard to kind of find books that I'm like, this is my favourite, I love this. But I do have 10 for you, so let's go through them. First up, we have It Ends With Us and It Starts With Us. I'm not going to hold up It Starts With Us, just It Ends With Us, but I did read both of the books. Now, I can't believe I've got Colleen Hoover on this list. That's just crazy. However, I'm not the biggest fan of her writing, but I do recognise that it's very easy to read. It's readable, and I do genuinely think It Ends With Us and It Starts With Us is her best work, and specifically It Ends With Us is her best novel. I did find this novel actually really surprising, and yeah, I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it, how fast I wanted to read it, and I was surprised by the twist that kind of happens in this book. So this is like a little bit of spoilers, but I'm not spoiling it too much. But essentially in It Ends With Us there is a romance, and then the romance is kind of thrown on its head and there's a twist, and I do think Colleen was very good at kind of creating this character that you really like and then kind of snatching that away from you and taking them away essentially and showing who they really are. And I think that is very clever and also very important, because I think this can happen in real life a lot, where you start dating someone and you think they're amazing, but then as you get further into the relationship you see who they actually are. And yeah, I just think it is actually a very valuable topic that this book covers and the second one covers. I think they're important topics, and yeah, I just think it's the best Colleen Hoover. So if you want to try any of her books, read this one and the second one, but I feel like that's the extent of Colleen Hoover that you need to read. That's it. I haven't actually read any of her other books, but I've seen videos like dissecting them, and just based on the themes and the language, I'm not really a fan, and I'm not going to be reading any other books. But It Ends With Us and It Starts With Us I would recommend. I think they are worthwhile. Next, in ninth place, we have Happy Place, which is by Emily Henry. This is my first Emily Henry book, and I didn't really know what to expect, except that I kind of heard that her books were kind of like rom-com movies in book form. Now, I don't really tend to like YA or like kind of like modern. I don't tend to like modern books that are just about normal life and like relationships and romance. I don't tend to like that. I tend to lean more to classics or fantasy or dystopia rather than like something that could happen in your life, which is what Happy Place is. But I did really enjoy Happy Place. I thought it was very well written. The characters were really nice. It follows a girl called Harriet who is engaged, and essentially her and her fiance have broken up, and then they all go on holiday, her and her uni group of friends, which her fiance is kind of part of, and none of them know that they have broken up, and they have to kind of put on this facade for the whole holiday, and that's the premise. And I did really enjoy this book. I think for me it was the characters, because essentially the core of the characters are three women, Harriet and her two friends from uni. And when I went to uni, I had two very close friends, so I was just kind of thinking, wow, this really mirrors me and my life. And also in the book, the three women are all very different, and me and my two friends are very different as well. So it was very interesting. And this book made me cry a lot because it's dealing with breakup, it's dealing with missing someone, it's dealing with loss, it's dealing with grief, which all of those themes were destroying me. But I love it when a book makes me cry. I also loved how it looked at kind of how these female friendships had changed and kind of moving away from your friends that you made at uni, which made me very sad because I don't want that to happen to me. So like just imagining it in this book was very sad. But yes, I did enjoy it. A tearjerker, also a good time, and yeah, a little bit of romance as well. So I would recommend Happy Place. I realised I said Happy Place was number 9, but technically it's number 8 because you've got it ends with us and it starts with us at 10 and 9. So Happy Place is actually number 8. But anyway, let's continue. Number 7, we have the book Atonement. Now I don't have the physical copy because I gave it away, but I read the book Atonement and I have long loved the film, so I just thought I might as well read the book. If you don't know the story of Atonement, it is essentially about this wealthy family in England right before World War One, I believe it is. Or is it World War Two? Right before World War One or World War Two. And it is essentially this family who have a few children in it, younger and older children. And there's a sister called Cecilia, and she kind of has this thing going with the housekeeper's son who lives nearby called Robbie. And then the other character is Celia's sister, who is called Bryony, and it is essentially about love, growing up, how you understand things when you're a child versus how you understand them as an adult. And essentially Bryony misinterprets an event and makes accusations because of this, and this results in a kind of butterfly effect of what happens in the future. And so the book is kind of, to my memory, it's told from Bryony's point of view, from her like childhood and how nice it was, but also from the traumatic elements, and then kind of her looking back at what she did and seeking penance. And yeah, just a story all about this. It's got themes of love, war, grief, regret, loss, all stuff like that. And I really enjoyed this book. I actually preferred it more than the movie, which is crazy. The movie actually didn't live up to what I remembered when I watched it again after reading this book. But yes, this book is very beautiful. Some of the language is extremely beautiful. There's extremely beautiful imagery, and it's a good story, and it's really sad. And yeah, just a general overall good read. So Atonement is my number 7. Now for number 6, we have The Secret History, now by Donna Tartt. Also Atonement was by Ian Mick something. But yes, next we have The Secret History. Now The Secret History is set in the 80s, and it's all about a boy who's kind of like, I think he's working class, and I think he's from California, and he kind of wants to escape his life. So he goes to university further away. He goes to university in New England, and he studies classics. I think, do they study, is it Latin? He studies like one thing under this one teacher, and it's this really exclusive group of people who are in this class who are all studying, and he essentially becomes infatuated with the whole concept of all the people in the group, with what they're studying, and he becomes friends. He joins this group, and then in the group a murder happens, and it's essentially about the outcome of that, what happens, the psychological toll on all of the characters, how they try to keep it secret, and all that stuff. This book is very popular and it's very beloved, and it's kind of stated as starting the like dark academia scene. I did enjoy this book. I think it took me some time to get into it, but I think once I was in it, I did really enjoy it. I did enjoy the characters. I think that's one of the main parts for me, is the characters, because I think the plot, because it mimics a classic tragedy, it can be a bit for lack of a better word, boring at sometimes. Like some parts go on for a long time, but it's still good. And yeah, I think for me it was the characters that I enjoyed the most, and the description of things. I really liked how the main character Richard described the only girl in the group, Camilla. His descriptions of her were just really nice, because he was kind of saying how beautiful she was, but they weren't overly sexual. However, I was a bit disappointed and let down by this book by just kind of, it was like a throwaway line near the end that I don't really understand why it was in there. And when I've spoken to friends who love this book, they didn't even remember that it was in there. So yeah, it's such a throwaway thing, but it's something that really stood out to me, and that I just couldn't set aside, and kind of soured the whole experience for me, to be honest. And it was essentially, there was a part of the book where So Richard is kind of obsessed with Camilla, who is the only girl in the group, and he fancies her, whatever. He essentially finds out that she's going through something terrible, something traumatic, and he suddenly has the urge to rape her and like dissects this in his mind a little bit. And that happened, and I was just so surprised and so taken aback, because I think it was so different from what Richard's character had been like throughout the rest of the book. And I don't really know why it was there, why it was added, why it was needed. The only explanation I can come up with is that it was to show how even Richard had kind of fallen into this denigration and like was a low life essentially. But I don't know, I just feel like that could have been shown in a different way. I didn't really like it, and it was really throwaway. It was just kind of like he suddenly thought, I want to rape her, and then that was it, and we moved on. Like, and it was just, I don't know, I didn't like that, and that kind of really soured the experience for me, which sucks because it was literally one sentence quite near the end. But I can't see past it, unfortunately. But I did still enjoy it, which is why it's on this list. And I did really like the ending. I thought the ending was good. And if I had to say my favourite character, I'd probably say Henry. Would have been Camilla if she didn't commit some things that she commits that I just hate. So yeah, that's A Secret History. Next we have The Sun Right and Pretty. Now this is the whole series, even though I'm only holding up the first book, and I read these 3 books right at the beginning of the year, and I actually did do a video about it as well, kind of dissecting the books and seeing how they're different from the show, because they are really different. And these books are definitely more on like the trivial side, like they're just teenagers falling in and out of love essentially. But I did really enjoy them. There is also, in the second and third book, there's a lot of exploration of grief as well, which I did enjoy, and all 3 books made me cry. All 3 books had me on the edge of my seat, like with the boy drama. All 3 books had me kicking my feet and giggling. So yeah, it was just a really fun time, and I would recommend the series. It's so different to the TV show in my opinion, but I would recommend the books, especially if you like the TV show. I think even though they're different, it's the same story, so there are some similarities. So yeah, that was the Sun Right and Pretty series. Now we have another series, and again, I'm talking about the whole series, even though it's only taking up 1 space on the list, I suppose. And this is a selection series. This book series came to my attention because it kind of had like a revamp online, I suppose. I think because there were possible adaptations in the works, although I think they're potentially not happening now. I'd love it if they did make one though, that would be great. So I read the first 3 books. There's 5 books, but the first 3 books are the only ones that kind of cover this story specifically. So I've read those 3 and I really enjoyed it. So the selection is essentially a dystopian YA about kind of a Bachelor-esque competition where girls from this newfound country of America are chosen to compete in a Bachelor style competition to win the hand in marriage of the prince, who will be the king. So they'll essentially become the queen. And I really enjoyed this series. I really got into it. I think the writing is like, it's fine. It's nothing like revolutionary, and I've seen a lot of people say it's even bad. Maybe at some points it's like a bit bad, but I don't know. For me, it's no Colleen Hoover. Like it's readable for me, and I enjoyed it, and I did think it was very well thought through and cleverly planned. And yeah, I just really enjoyed it. It was a bit of like escapism. It was interesting, it was exciting, there was love triangles, and I did like the characters. So yeah, I would recommend the selection series, at least the first 3 books. I'm not sure about the other 2 because I have not read them yet. But yeah, I did enjoy it. So the selection is my number 4 slot. Now the next one I just want to cover briefly. I don't have it physically because I read it digitally, but it is Atomic Habits by James Clear. And you've probably heard of this book, but it had been on my to-read list for so long as a fiction book to read, and it completely lived up to the hype for me, because I think this book has been very hyped, but it really lived up to the hype for me. just like completely from page one. It was so inspiring. I felt so ready to implement all these habits in my life. I think it has really good tips, and I'm actually following what I learn and following through, which is very good. And yeah, just a really good book if you're looking to be more productive with your life, establish habits and maintain those habits. Now we're on to the big ones, the final two, and my number 2 book is Rumblefish by S.E. Hinton. Now S.E. Hinton wrote my absolute favourite book, The Outsiders. So I finally, after, I don't even know, I think I read Outsiders when I was 16, so, and I'm 23 now. So I finally read another one of her books because I'd never read another one before. The book I read of hers was my favourite ever, so I thought I need to read some more. And I did really like Rumblefish. It is very similar to Outsiders, both thematically and stylistically, very similar, so I did really enjoy it. It's also really short, like The Outsiders. And yeah, I just really liked Rumblefish. So Rumblefish, I think it's set, it must be 60s, 50s era, and it's essentially about this boy who's 14, who is a criminal, a juvenile delinquent, because he's poor, because he's bored, because he wants to be tough, and essentially him and his brother and like all his friends used to be in gangs, used to have gang wars, turf wars, but they made a pact to end the gangs because people were dying. So they ended the gangs, and essentially the main character in this book, Rusty James, very interesting names in this book as per usual from S.E. Hinton. Main character Rusty James, he kind of wishes they could go back to how gang life was. And this book is essentially just 130 pages of Rusty James showing us his life, showing us how he lives, how people are scared of him, what's going on, and talking about his brother. So his brother is called Motorcycle Boy, and he's a few years older than him. He's extremely attractive, he's extremely mysterious, he's extremely feared, he's seen as a really tough guy, he's seen as almost like this otherworldly character that other people see and are almost like, he's like a celebrity of like, oh my god, it's Motorcycle Boy. And Rusty just completely looks up to him and just wants to be like him, and is always insisting, hey, me and my brother look so much alike, don't we? And everyone's like, not really. And yeah, Rusty essentially spends the whole book pining over his brother and wondering when he's going to come back because he's gone, but he does end up coming back. And the main like thing of this book that I took away from it was essentially about how when you're younger you think certain things and you have this certain worldview, and you think, especially kids like Rusty James, like you think that the world is this way and that's true, and you have this certain belief. And I think this book was completely Rusty telling us his view, his belief, and then at the same time everything that he was telling us and everything he was telling us that was true that he believed was being deconstructed in front of us. And you come to realize at the end that kind of none of it was true, and it was naivety, it was just his childish view on things. And actually when you grow up, life is different, and what matters and what happens in life is different, which I found incredibly heartbreaking, to be honest, for this kid Rusty James, who has been dealt not a very good hand in life, kind of realizing that everything that he thought isn't true. And it's an incredibly sad book, incredibly emotional. I think it's definitely one of those books that creeps up on you and packs a punch when it finally gets there and you finally feel it. But I would highly recommend it because it's so short. It covers very important topics and themes of like poverty, toxic masculinity, grief, family, brotherhood, a lot like The Outsiders. And yeah, I would just highly recommend it. It's the type of book for me where you read it and it stays with you for a while, and I probably will do some rereads after kind of knowing what happens, kind of going back and rereading and dissecting it all, I think would be very interesting. So yes, my number 2 book of 2023 was Rumblefish. And finally, my number 1 book of 2023 was Dune, written by Frank Herbert. Now, I really wanted to read this book because I am a massive fan of sci-fi, and I'd heard people say that a lot of sci-fi now kind of draws on inspiration draws its inspiration from Dune, and that the book is acclaimed and a lot of people love it a lot. So I was very excited to read it, and I was not disappointed at all. Now this book is quite long, especially when you compare it to the other books that I've read this year, so 560-ish pages, but it didn't feel like that to me. I think, again, with Secret History, once I was in it, and there was no putting it down. I was in it then, and I just think the story, the plot, the characters in this book are so good, and I really like them. I really enjoy them. I really enjoyed the themes. I loved the action. I loved the sci-fi elements, just everything about this book I really enjoyed and really loved. I read this book after having watched the first film, the first new one with Timothy. I've also watched half of the old one. I need to finish that. I haven't actually watched the whole thing. Watched half of the old one because I was intrigued to watch it after reading this book, and I think watching the first film helped with kind of understanding stuff, because a lot of this book is kind of trying to explain the world, and it does kind of throw you right in to what is happening and all their world customs and all their world politics and stuff. So I think having watched the first film and then reading this is helpful because you already know quite a lot. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'm glad that it was just one book and not like a series. There are more books, but I don't think I'll read them, because although I did really like it, I did really enjoy it, I feel like 560 pages for me has satisfied my first of this world. I don't personally, I'm not like I need more. I think this perfectly encapsulates it, and I'm just so happy that it's one book, because a part of me was like, is it 3 books? Because it's going to be 3 films in the new Timothy version. But no, this book is just in 3 sections. So that's why there's 3 films. But yes, I just really enjoyed this book, and I'd probably recommend it to anyone. It's obviously long and maybe a little bit dense, and potentially if you don't like sci-fi, maybe not for you, but if you do, I would highly recommend Dune. And yeah, it's my #1 book of 2023. So that is the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. My reading goal for this year is 25, so hopefully I will get there, and hopefully I'll read some more books that I enjoy. I don't know, I think maybe 2023 was kind of a flop of a year book-wise. Like, even though I do really love many of the books that I spoke about today, there wasn't one where it was an instant favourite or an instant classic, unfortunately. So hopefully 2024 is a year that can bring some more favourites, some more instant classics. I think honestly I need to just read some more classic books, because that's definitely my main love. Literature love is classic books, so maybe I just need to stop reading modern things for a little bit. But yeah, we'll see what happens in 2024. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Bye.